people, they like family a lot, and they also like making friends a lot. So that's why I see, there will be great potentials, for the Latin American people to do business in the Greater Bay Area and vice versa. Because we Chinese also love family, we Chinese also love friends, and this is very, very vital. Having said that, just now, Michael has already mentioned the background of each panelist already. So I will not go deep again, into mentioning the background of each panelist. But I can assure you that the panelists, each panelist tonight, all of them are very well distinguished in their career or in their, position in Hong Kong or in their country. So without further ado, the first one that I would like to ask is Professor Andrew Chan. He's a very distinguished scholar in Hong Kong. And, he's very well known in the academic field, not only in the academic field, but also in the business field, because in the business, a lot of businessmen also seek his advice, now especially seek his advice, about the Greater Bay Area. And he is also non-executive director of a few listed companies in Hong Kong that I think speaks about his volume already. So without further ado, over to you, Andrew. Andrew, yep, your turn.
First of all, my name is Andrew. The questionnaire is still in front of me. How can I get rid of that? Yes, I get rid of that. I'm Andrew. I'm a professor of practice in Chinese University. I have taught marketing for 38 years. So that must be a record in Hong Kong, in whole China. And then I have been directors for a lot of programs comprising BBA, MBA, EMBA. And then this year, I was appointed as vice chairman of the board for the GBA business group. Not because of pay, just because of my marginal contribution. Meaning if I spend the rest of my career in some other colleges, university, I might earn more. But the thing is, I think the Bay Area needs a lot of research, a lot of people promulgating the idea, bringing people all outside, like the GBA, coming here and bringing GBA to outside world. I have worked for the Bank of America and IBM before I joined academia. My major specialist on marketing, business strategy, and cross-cultural management. I think this is extremely important when we talk about Greater Bay Area. And then Thomas just mentioned family and all that. I think a lot of people did make the wrong, big mistake when they just look at the kind of industries, businesses in GBA and teach those courses. That's wrong. We have to teach something that's not that visible, just like friendship building, the invisible assets, from transaction-based all the way to relationship-based. That's how things are being performed in China. I'm doing research and also professional consultancy. Without being ado, first slide is Greater Bay Area statistics. Professor usually like to start something with a diagram. So we are talking about a population of 71 million. There's a lot of people. Meaning, first of all, it's a big market. Secondly, it's a lot of talent. Area 56,000 km, according to research by, I think it's by Hong Kong Bank. And then combined GPA in 2018 is 1.6 trillion. But this is just the beginning of the whole story. They're expecting in 2030, the US, the GDP would reach US dollar 4.6 trillion. And the second slide, please. The second slide, Michael. Oh, yes. These are the kind of industries profiting the most from the development of China's GPA as of July 2018. You see three major industries, like technology and innovation, trade and logistics, financial services. But just like the story was told about nobody wears shoes in Africa in old days, I'm not stereotyping. That means there are a lot of opportunities. So if you are in telecom, in retail, in education, in manufacturing, that means a lot of potential. So this give you the snapshot. If you folks and also the people participating in this webinar are interested, you just write to me. via email, via anything like LinkedIn, and then I can relay those statistics to you. I'm here being a connector. I'm not here doing business, so to speak. And then this is a new ball game, but there are a lot of problems and challenges, mainly because I usually ask a very simple question: who's in charge? The ideas of having this GBA is a very simple one. In a nutshell, it's integrating individual strength synergistically. That is to say 9 plus 2. 9, all having different advantages and then their own specializations, and the 2 is Hong Kong and Macau, all because of one country's 2 systems, and then the exposure to outside world, at the very good positions of bringing GBA, the whole China to the outside world, and all outside world to GBA and also to China. But the thing is, under that scenario, even though we have very strong government policy support, this is you don't have a question about it, and then improving in like connectivities and freedom and everything, but we have a big problem. Please, PowerPoint 3, the third one, the third slide. Well, they talk about the good side, but as an academic, we look at the dark side. When they talk about Guangzhou, they talk about the trading hub. When you talk about Shenzhen, technology, manufacturing, and innovation hub. When they talk about Hong Kong, it's international financial center. When they talk about tourism and leisure. But the thing is, when people move to, according to my research, move to GBA, they basically concentrate on the silo, on the narrow part of it. So the integration part is kind of missing. And nobody is there being the mastermind. Who's the mastermind? And what sort of things? All 11 places will have their own VMV, meaning vision, and values. Who's going to integrate everything together? What's the overall objective of the GPA? The tactical move, who's controlling what? Who's the leader, who are not? So basically it's greatly under research, meaning we need a lot of research in that particular dimension. Another tough part would be the talent. They have all the talents in separate parts. And then when people come into GBA, they have their own particular specializations and all that. So even though the whole thing is called upon synergistic kind of integration, but somehow once you enter into a silo, it's back to square one. So that would be my worry. Our directions for GBA is to not to talk about courses that are so simplistic as to, like we talked about the technology and innovation, finance and investment. We should talk about macro strategy, corporate strategies, general management in that particular GBA context, the leadership, cross-cultural kind of management. And also we have to go very deep into local and practical issues. That is to say, there are a lot of work in front of me, but we have a team and we are ready to serve in the research side, in helping business, helping people moving in. There is no point for us setting up the GBA, but nobody would care about coming in and moving out. So we are at that juncture. So I might stop here and then I'll give the ball back to Thomas.
Thank you very much, Professor Andrew. Thank you for the 3 slides. I think they are very informative. I'm sure there will be questions for you afterwards, or even, you know, after your presentation just now, because there will be an overall Q&A session after all the 6 panelists speak. So may I ask, first of all, any question from the participants for Andrew immediately? If not, then I'll carry on to the next panelist. Okay, for the smooth flow of the webinar, then I will now ask the second panelist, Susana Munoz, my very good friend, and she's an international advisor, particularly for Mexico, and especially now, you know, for Greater Bay Area, whereby she is connecting, you know, Mexico and the Greater Bay Area. You know, businessmen would like to seek her advice how to invest in GBA, or vice versa. Businessmen from China seek her advice how to invest in Mexico. So Susanna writes a lot also. So Professor just now mentioned that he presented, the presentation by a few slides, but Susanna presented herself in a way that she writes a lot, about the current situation in China, the current regulations, and the current business opportunities in the Greater Bay Area. So without further ado, Susanna, can you now speak to the participants? What are you doing right now in the GBA? What are you helping? How are you helping the Mexicans, going to invest in the GBA or vice versa? Over to you, Susanna.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Michael, for the invitation to be part of this panel. First, as Thomas mentioned, I am the managing partner of GBA Latam Trade and Investment Advisors. We are a very new consultancy firm, and we focus on business strategy, economic analysis, market, trade, and industry research. I have been doing Mexico-China business for almost 20 years, both in the public and the private sector. And most recently, I was the representative of the Ministry of Economy of Mexico here in Hong Kong for 6 years. So today I would like to share some insights on the China-Latin American relation from the trade and investment perspectives. First, as we have mentioned, there is no doubt that after the pandemic, the Chinese economic influence in Latin America region is going to gain strength. We're also very aware that the US is really leaving the Latin American economies on their own during this pandemic. And definitely this is not a new trend. So we can really understand why China is working really hard in what analysts have called the mask diplomacy. But we can also understand from the Latin American point of view why Latin American countries are really welcoming these diplomatic efforts. Just last month, the Chancellor of China, Mr. Wang Yi, offered a huge help package to Latin American economies. And in the past few months, we have seen many rounds of donations and shipments of medical supplies and equipment from China to Latin America. We know that trade and investment between China and Latin America is increasing. Last year, we recorded $315 billion US dollars in trade and $1.9 billion in investment transactions. In addition, as Michael just mentioned before, many countries in the region have joined the Belt and Road Initiative. However, from my perspective is that the reality is that the Belt and Road Initiative is not a free trade agreement. And it's also not an investment agreement. So in that sense, in order to deepen the relation between China and Latin American countries, we need to move forward to more FTAs and more investment agreements. Another important consideration that I would like to highlight here is that China is entering into a new economic era, or to be more clear, what they will call the dual cycle economic concept that was just presented a few weeks ago by President Xi. For those who have not heard about this dual circulation model, it's based on the objective of improving the functioning of the domestic and the global economic cycles to achieve a healthy performance of the national economy. And it comprises two key aspects. One is high quality development, and the other one is greater economic openness. And within in this sense, what can we expect of this new economic strategy and how it fits with Latin America? So at the economic policy level, this dual cycle economy means that the focus will be on domestic market. And this means more policies to promote domestic consumption, increase domestic production, technology development, and employment creation. But it also means that the demand of certain products will increase, including raw materials, food, inputs for high technology industries. In addition, there will be a push from the top to advance in 5G, Internet of Things, e-commerce, fintech, financial services, artificial intelligence, and all these new sectors. And how does this fit with Latin America? And like more likely, what is the new way forward between China and Latin America? Again, from my perspective, on the trade front, we all know that trade in Latin American region has dropped 23% during the first half of the year. Mainly exports to the US, exports to European Union, and exports to within the region. But it's not this way to exports to Asia and exports to China that have recorded less decreases from Latin America. So this is because despite the pandemic, China has continued purchasing products from Latin America, mainly food, raw materials, mining products, and oil. So at this point, well, it is clear that trade with China is an important component of the economic recovery for Latin America. However, we are all witnessing this new trend in trade towards the more regional, more resilient, more stable supply chains. This is what some experts have called the balkanization of the world economy, with productive hubs like USMCA, Pacific Alliance, CPTPP, and maybe by the end of the year we'll have the RCEP. So within this scenario, how can we overcome these challenges posed by the regionalization of trade, and as a consequence, the regionalization of the investment? Mostly Latin American economies have trade deficits with China. We export mainly raw materials, food, and the only way to increase the exports will be by expanding the catalog of products we sell to China. In this regard, I think the dual circulation economic strategy, if we Latin American countries do our homework well, may bring a lot of opportunities for Latin American companies. This means that we should move forward on new topics of the agenda, like the digital economy, new infrastructure, financial services, technology, and research development. And I think this is exactly where the GBA region becomes very relevant at this stage of the new pandemic or the post-pandemic relation between Latin America and China. China, as we know, is a huge country, but it is only within the GBA region where the companies can find this ecosystem for the development and commercialization of all these new industries. Now, the Internet of Things solutions, artificial intelligence, robotics, Industry 4.0, fintech, big data. Moreover, the GBA region has a world-class infrastructure for the development of e-commerce. We have the Guangdong pilot free trade zone, we have cross-border commerce solutions, we have logistic hubs, we have data centers. And I am honored to say that only a few companies have, just like CW here represented by Thomas Wong, and us, GBA LATAM, are promoting these new e-commerce solutions for Latin American companies, which from my point of view is the best way to reduce this trade deficit between Latin America and China. And finally, on the investment side, both regions definitely need to work on strengthening connectivity. And as a second step, we need to make sure that our supply chains are more resilient and less vulnerable to shocks. And in this sense is where FTAs and investment agreements will become key instruments to achieve these objectives. So I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Susanna. To the participants, might be you don't know that actually Susanna also speaks Mandarin and speaks the dialect of China called Cantonese. All right. So in this regard, it's popular in Hong Kong as well as in China, especially you know, in businesses surrounding Mexico with China. All right. So if participants would like to have further questions, right. If participants would like to have some questions from her on her, you know, you can ask her after after all the panelists speak, all right, or even you can write to her through our PBEC. So now it's my turn. I'm on the order. I'm the third person to speak. I would just briefly speak about what I'm doing in the GBA and what I'm doing, you know, in Latin America. I'm an accountant. I run a CPA firm. But in the year 2006 February, since February 2006, then I have been you know, dealing with a lot of Latin American companies, and I help a lot of Latin American companies, you know, to set up the operation in Hong Kong and thus entering into China as well. And of course, as an accountant, I do the books and records, you know, for the Latin American businesses. But apart from that, because of my work involvement, you know, lately I was appointed by the China-Brazil Chamber of Commerce in Sao Paulo to be their rep in Hong Kong. So a lot of Brazilian companies are also looking, you know, to expand into China, especially in the Greater Bay Area. And recently, I have helped 4 Quattro 4 Brazilian startup company, even though it's a financial hub appealing to a lot of people. But actually, a lot of people, if they want to do high tech before entering into China.
Thomas, we're losing you a little bit. Thomas, can you hear me?
Also would like to come to Hong Kong to get engaged with our. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit there, Thomas. You're clearer now. Thank you.
Is it all right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry. So can I continue, Michael, now?
Yeah, please do. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So just now I mentioned that as the representative of the China-Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, in Hong Kong, I have also recently helped 4 Brazilian startups to get hooked up, with the Science Park in Hong Kong. That speaks about, Latin American companies, be it, whether they are conventional companies or startups, they also like to explore, into China through Hong Kong. And what makes me as an accountant also a little bit special from the other accountants, I think that, because of COVID, a lot of people, especially in Latin America, are locked down. Like in Colombia, like in Mexico, like enter into the e-commerce platform. Meaning that I can hook up the Latin American companies, joining a e-commerce platform in the Greater Bay Area, that I can help the people, do this in the GBA. And thus, I have e-commerce platform powered by Tencent, where the Latin American businessmen or businesses or shops, tiendas, when they want to open so that speaks about the volume, the opportunities in China, especially in the Greater Bay Area, where just now Professor Andrew Chen mentioned that 71 million, populate big opportunities. Always remember this. This is what I want to tell the participants. If you do not do something in the Greater Bay Area, maybe you will miss the boat. So you invest just a little bit of your time right now, a little bit of your time, won't be too much. Invest a little bit of your money, marginal contribution, as what Professor Chen just now mentioned, all right? Invest marginally, and then I think you will get very, very good results. At the end of the session, my good friend, the Greater Bay Area, because their company also has an operation in Shenzhen. So I think, Michael, I speak what I should speak tonight already. So if okay, then I would go to the 4th panelist, Sergio. Sergio is very good in economics. He is an economist. And then I think he will speak from as an economist angle. He will speak about,
Okay, Thomas, you're breaking up again, so we'll hand it straight over to Sergio.
Economy in the Bay Area as well as in Latin America. So over to you, Sergio.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Michael, for the invitation. Good evening to everyone, or good morning if you're on this side of the Pacific Ocean. I will speak about what we're seeing in terms of economics, and in particular, I will focus on Mexico. But I think that the trend that I would like to discuss this evening with you is something that is general for the whole Pacific Rim area. I see two major forces shaping up economic activity in the next few years. In the case of Latin America, I think that there is a stronger trend for opening up. This has to do with the fact that COVID has got unusually strong impact on the region. 2 out of the 3 countries with the largest numbers of deaths are in the region, Brazil and Mexico. But the impact in terms of economic activity has also been very strong, to the extent that we expect that Latin America will contract -8% this year. This is the whole region. And in the case of Mexico in particular, the contraction is going to be 11.2%. These are numbers that we haven't seen in the regions since the Great Depression. Actually, we cannot have reliable statistics of the last time that the region faced such a circumstance. So from that point of view, opening up is a no-brainer for Latin America if we want to recover growth in the future. And the example of Mexico, I think, is very important, because what we have already started to see, with the drop that we experienced in the second quarter in terms of GDP dropping close to 17%. This morning we have the definite figures for GDP in Mexico. But we already have seen that the economy probably hit the bottom in June. And then in the next few months, with sort of a more high frequency data, we start to see a rebound, but the rebound is essentially having to do with the export sector. It is exports, the ones that are going to be driving the way onwards from what is going to be a very challenging circumstance. And in that regard, and as Susana mentioned, there is a very important infrastructure in place for supporting this growth of the external sector. Mexico exports around $360 billion of manufacturing goods every year. This is a very important difference for those of you not familiar with Latin America. Side of the Panama Channel, you have essentially producers that are very efficient in commodities. This has to do with even with population density, whereas the countries that were north of the Panama Channel, which have a higher population densities, are specializing more in manufacturing. And in that regard, out of the $360 billion in manufacturing exports that Mexico do every year, are twice the combined manufacturing exports of the rest of the region. Brazil is a large country with a very important manufacturing base. Mexico exports 4 times more than Brazil in terms of manufacturing goods. And part of this has to do with what has been going on since NAFTA was signed back in 1994. Mexico has worked very effectively in terms of expanding trade treaties. It has trade treaties with virtually every large economy in the world. And from that point of view, has been becoming a very important manufacturing base in areas such as the auto sector, electronics, and the like. If you can actually think about the export profile of Mexico, it resembles a lot what you see on China, in the sense that Mexico and China have usually been competitors rather than the complementarity that you see between countries in South America, producers of commodity, and China being a major consumer of commodities. So that's a trend on our side of the ocean. We have to export or else, let me put it this way. And from that point of view, what we're going to be seeing is that as a way we're going to get out of this very difficult situation we're experiencing. On the Asian side of the Pacific Rim, what I see is a need for diversification. That is a trend that I think is going to be driving activity. It has to do with the balkanization that Susana mentioned, as well as with this marginal investment that Professor Chan and Thomas already mentioned, in the sense that we are going to be seeing a world, in which regions are going to be more important. And from the point of view of the strategy of firms, it will be important to have a foothold on different regions of the world. A Chinese company that wants to export cannot longer afford to be just based in China, but has to think about having different plants in different parts of the world. And the natural, I would say, destination in the North American region is going to be Mexico. This has to do not only with the fact that you have a comparatively lower labor cost. There are many other advantages. Again, I will probably stress, the extensive network of trade treaties. You have already an experience in terms of manufacturing goods, and you already see this happening in the sense that when you think about the share of total US imports that are supplied by China and Mexico. Back in 2017, China used to supply 22% of total US imports and Mexico 13.8. These figures have obviously been shocked in 2020 by the COVID. But if you look at the end of last year, when you were seeing already the impacts of the US tariffs on Chinese imports, that proportions were actually reversed, with China providing 16.4 versus 14.6 for Mexico. So the gap starts to move. And from that point of view, the natural strategy for any firm is to have a foothold on the different regions that the world is going to have. We would rather have free trade with everyone, you know, a very open global system. I'm a particular advocate of globalization, but unfortunately, I think that the trend in the next few years is going to be towards more regional blocks. And from that point of view, Mexico will have to take advantage of that opportunity to attract investment and to strengthen links with countries such as China. So this diversification force is going to be important for both countries the way I see it. Let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Thank you. Before I pass to Robert, Sergio, can I ask you one question very quickly? Just now you mentioned NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, all right? So can you mention a little bit why Mexico is so appealing, you know, to people in terms of production, especially in Tijuana, which is a free trade zone. And I see that a lot of people now opening factories in Tijuana so that when they finish their production, they can ship directly to America, zero tariff. Can you explain a little bit, you know, to the participants?
Absolutely, Thomas. And I think that some of my fellow panelists can give you more detail in terms of the actual activity in different cities. We all know that China is very big, and that a major pitfall in terms of business strategies to think about a national Chinese market. You have regional markets because the country is so big that you have to focus on the specific areas of China. Something similar, I would argue, would happen when you think about Mexico in terms of different activities. Tijuana and Mexicali in the northern border with California have specialized a lot on electronics and, for instance, healthcare products, medical equipment and the like, whereas the very strong auto sector has been more focused on the central part of the country, with companies from different nationalities actually choosing specific cities to base their operations. So from that point of view, I think that once you decide to go into Mexico, you have to go local in order to look for the advantages that the specific areas of the country will have. It is going to be very important in that regard to actually choose properly your location within Mexico. The trade agreement, NAFTA, and now its successor, USMCA, provide a platform for competitiveness for the whole country, but specialization in a specific industry is very important to pick the right place in Mexico to base your operations. As you mentioned, Tijuana has some strengths. It is not only labor. I would say that in the past, it was only cheap labor that was attracting investment in Mexico. Not anymore. I think that we have been moving up the value-added ladder. You can have very sophisticated electronics in Guadalajara, for instance. So it is actually, getting local once you arrive into Mexico.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Now over to Robert. So Robert is now based in LA, residing in LA right now. So I think he will speak from the LA perspective or the US perspective. So LA, I noticed that in LA there are a lot of Latinos residing there, a lot of Mexicans residing there. So can you tell the participants, what sort of business opportunities in LA, even though it is an American city, but, lots of opportunities with China from the Latino perspective in LA. Over to you, Rob.
Sure. Thanks, Thomas. And I will answer that, but also pick up on some of the comments that Sergio made, because I think those relate more broadly to the whole LatAm strategy vis-a-vis China, Hong Kong, and the Greater Bay Area. So Just regarding the point you just made, it is an interesting note. California itself, indeed Los Angeles, and almost every place name in the state, with the exception of towns like Irvine, have Spanish names. Indeed, we were part of the Spanish Empire. We were a part of Mexico, Spain. Then there was an uprising backed by Washington, and then the state reverted or moved to control by what's now part of the contiguous 48 states of the United States. So we still have, even in law, for example, Spanish law applies, like marriage law. So if you ever want to get married in California, watch out, because it's communal property. That's a holdover from the Spanish civil system. And on and on and on. So there's that part of the legal system. Then indeed, population-wise, in fact, our demographics are shifting. Already they've shifted in the United States overall, it's worth pointing out. But earlier, it became a fact that the newest generation of Californians is majority non-white. And the most dominant population in that is indeed Latinx is the popular term, but it's predominated by people from Mexico. There's even a term in the United States, Chicano, which used to be kind of a negative word, just like certain terms for minorities at one time were negative. Now that's embraced. And in any case, there's a huge connection culturally and ethnically, and indeed in terms of commerce. So that kind of gets to Sergio's points. So we've got, you can almost think of maybe North to South America. What you have with North America, and I imagine, people are generally familiar with the immigrant story in the United States, but of course there's one in Canada that has even more of the French influence. We also have some of that here. The Quebecois and the Arcadians are the French populations. Anyway, you've had this ethnic, more Western European domination in the north, and then from Mexico on down, it's been Spanish and Portuguese. But because of things like, it's now USMCA, so NAFTA was renegotiated. One of the kind of not so picked up on, in fact, the final signing occurred at the beginning of this year for the USMCA. And so you had all this, along with the trade war, where most of the attention is given to US-China. Actually, there were also frictions first with Canada and indeed with Mexico as well. That's been worked out. What that means for operations from China, along the lines of what Sergio was talking about, you can indeed see this trend where now Mexico is getting further integrated with the US and Canadian economies. And as this dominant economy within Latin America as well, that could have a lot of influence. And now from the East Asian perspective, or particularly China GBA, what you could see, and I think this is where the trend to watch will be, you've got deindustrialization going on in the GBA. It's the combination of factors. One is actually Beijing has wanted to move out lower end industries from the GBA. But then there's the other part is what's happened with the trade war and other concerns. A negative sign for China from COVID is not only the United States, but a whole host of countries have decided their supply chains cannot be so reliant on China. There's definitely going to be supply chain diversification. What's going on before COVID, it's now accelerated by COVID. Same thing with digital platforms. They were going on before COVID, they're now accelerated by COVID. So I think that's the real thing to watch here. In addition to what we've seen with what's more typically talked about, deindustrialization from China occurring within ASEAN, which I agree, especially with this audience, PBEC and all, that's going to be probably a bigger driver. But starting with Mexico and then other parts of Latin America will be also key to that relocation of industrial activity. What will be interesting, I think, in all of this is the way the Belt Road could play a very critical role, depending on your perspective, good or bad. From China's perspective, of course, it wants to see the Belt Road succeed. And if you talk to people about the opportunities, say, to move manufacturing from Guangdong to Vietnam, the number one issue I've heard about is like, I'd love to do that. The problem is they don't have the infrastructure in Vietnam. I'd love to go to Indonesia. They don't have the infrastructure. So that's one way Belt Road could actually aid that process. Same would apply to Latin America. It really, although there's a lot of discussion nowadays with COVID on the medical support, and I acknowledge that as maybe something also worth watching. I think what's going to be even more fundamental long-term will be what Belt and Road might be able to do for Latin America, and then how they can help provide an infrastructure to do more of that. In the US and Europe, they're looking to reshore, but what you're going to probably find a little bit more of is this sort of transnational relocation of industrial activity. And that's where Latin America could gain a lot. I'll just conclude by saying there's an interesting geopolitical twist to that as well, from at least two dimensions. One is, as we know, the US is no fan of Belt Road officially. I think you talk to people who are involved in commerce and economics, they don't have as many issues with it because, you know, infrastructure generally is good, economic growth is good, development is good. And it's especially what's interesting is where the United States opposes Belt Road on so many levels because of security concerns. And there's also, we could say for a separate discussion, the debt burdens that are implied by that, which I would say are still significant. Nevertheless, generally speaking, infrastructure, if it's good infrastructure, should be very welcome. Now, what that could, although the US is against that, actually, when you look at the US's issues in Latin America, infrastructure is a big part of the problem. When you look at what typically Latin America gets focused on, with the exceptions of maybe Brazil, but certainly Central America and Mexico, is the drugs trade, which the US plays a huge role in, being the source of demand for all that. But if you were to provide more infrastructure to these countries, that could help people be able to find other economic activities. It could be part of the solution, in other words. That's one thing. So there's an irony to opposing Belt Road. Belt Road could actually be very good for US security interests if it provides for a more stable economic environment in Latin America. That's point one. Point two is there could be a bit of an irony with China supporting Belt Road. While that's a good thing for a near-term strategy, just like the US and Europe discovered, you can have too much deindustrialization. So I think a challenge for China, and indeed the GBA itself, is how much do you want to deindustrialize that area? And how much industrialization do you want to send to Latin America, other parts of the world? I'll just leave with that, but I think that's part of the interesting dynamics going on here, where there's good and bad for everyone involved. The US, you're going to hear, is probably going to say things from Washington. They're opposed to Chinese activities in Latin America. But I don't think from a commercial standpoint, and certainly going back to Thomas's original point, from people in the United States, and it's a growing proportion of the population is ethnically Latin American, Latinx, they're going to see that as an opportunity too. And they're probably going to be also, going to their home countries and investing and getting involved in that.
Thanks very much, Rob. Just now you mentioned the word infrastructure. I would like also to share with the participants, that actually in the Greater Bay Area now, there's a lot of infrastructure work going on, building bridges, building highways, connecting cities to cities, so there are a lot going on, with this infrastructure going on in the GBA. I'm sure it will also help the logistic business. So therefore now, with this point, I will pass over to Cesar Silva, my client. They run a very successful company, a Mexican company in Shenzhen. Over to you, Cesar.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Michael. And thank you to all the panelists and the audience here. First of all, I'm Cesar Silva. I work as the International Operations Director for a company, NICE, in Mexico City. And what we do is something called conformity assessment. So that means that we deal with regulatory aspects and standards aspects of international trade. That means we issue certificates that allow gain access to the different markets in Latin America. We've been doing that ever since the NAFTA free trade agreement was signed back in 1993. And NICE was born in 1994. And as of 2013, given the growth in the trade between China and Mexico, NICE decided to establish an office first in Hong Kong and then in Shenzhen to help not only Asian, but the manufacturers in the entire region to gain access to the Mexican market easier and help them facilitate both trade and compliance with the Mexican national regulations. Nowadays, what we do in terms of conformity assessment is certification, registration, and all regulatory processes for the companies, not only in Asia, but the entire world, because we have customers, everywhere. We do consumer information, laboratory testing, management systems, and training for everybody that wants to get into the deeper knowledge into the conformity assessment aspects before exporting a product to not only Mexico, but Latin America. Can I get the next one, Mike, please? Thank you. Like other panelists were saying, diversification is the key to growth. So the different industries that we serve is electric, electronic, telecom. We basically and originally, we started as a certification company for electrical and electronic products and telecom. But we decided to diversify or scope because there's a lot of opportunity in other industries. For example, with this environment that we're living right now with the pandemic, we've seen a huge growth in demand of certification for medical devices and medical supplies, like mouth masks that require certification in Mexico, and not only Mexico, but also in Colombia. And so that we've helped several customers to gain access to the region. And those are the, up in the left of the slide, all the industries that we serve. And as you can see, that it's diversification that helps and launches growth. And that's what has happened during the past years for NICE Asia. As you can see in the chart there, we have seen many common and constant increase in the number of services that we have done for several customers in Asia, and not only Asia, but like I said, in Europe and North America, and also other Latin American countries trying to get trying to export to other economies. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is diversification is the key to growth and export to other countries. But before exporting, I have to learn and understand what are the requirements, regulatory requirements that my product has to comply. An example of that is e-commerce. E-commerce in Mexico has experienced a huge regulatory change since the last year. There used to be, if I was an exporter, let's say I'm an exporter of a manufacturer, Chinese manufacturer of an electronic product, and I sell through an e-commerce channel. And before May 2019, my product did not have to comply selling to any regulations selling through an e-commerce channel. After the regulation changed in May 2019, I do have to certify my product, and that means I have to do testing on my product. That means there's many things I have to consider before exporting my product from China or from anywhere in the world to the Mexican market. So there's many things I have to consider before exporting. And that's what we do. That's what we help manufacturers to beforehand understand all the requirements they have to comply in terms of regulations, because otherwise the product is stuck in customs, and we've seen that dramatic scenario many times. So that's why we were born. Can I get the next one, Mike, please? So now what we do is we serve several economies, gain access to several economies. Of course, Mexico, because we were born here, but also El Salvador, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. And what is happening in the region? In general, most countries in Latin America are adopting or creating new regulations because there is being an increase of the trade with Asia and with other countries around the world. And they're creating new regulations, not as limitations, but as a way to make sure that safe products and energy efficient products are getting into their markets. So increase in regulations. Secondly, the adoption of international standards. Latin America in general wants to get in the same level as other countries like North America, like Europe, like Asia, in terms of application of international standards. In terms of recognition of international testing protocols and certifications. So in most countries in Latin America, the adoption of international standards is a fact and it's happening. So that's a good thing. And thirdly, the proliferation of the regulations will imply that there's more knowledge to be understood before exporting. So if I want to go and export to Ecuador, I have to understand that there's 300 different regulations for different products there. Because if I don't know that, I'm not going to be able to export. If I have to understand that e-commerce in Mexico now is regulated, and I have to comply with non-regulations. And the same thing happens for most countries around the world. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that Latin America is in general trying to get the same level as other countries or other regions in the world. Thank you, Thomas. That's what I have.
Thanks a lot, Cesar. So all the panelists have spoken already. So I hope the participants will thoroughly enjoy, what we have spoken. So the participants can see that, we have people in the academic field, we have businessmen, we have economists, we have international advisor, but all of us, we are now concentrated, in the Greater Bay Area. That shows, the tendency or the attractiveness, of the Greater Bay Area. So I hope that the Pacific Basin Economic Council, PBEC, will continue to serve worldwide, especially APAC, to promote the GBA as well as to promote Latin America as much as we can in days ahead. And I'm sure Michael will do his part. And this is the first of the many webinars that we have hosted so far pertaining to the GBA and Latin America, all right? So I sincerely hope that, there will be more to come. So therefore, now back to you, Michael, to wrap up or to open the floor, for participants to throw questions to the panelists. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Thomas. And I have to say, I've been taking pages of notes. It's been a fascinating dialogue already. Obviously, time is always against us, so we're coming to the top of the hour already. But I had one question because I think it covers, I guess, everybody here, is the knowledge factor. And I want to come back to Professor Andrew, if I may, because I think it's really poignant about the fact that your investors are looking at creating a new business school in Greater Bay Area. But obviously, a large percentage of students and even teachers will probably come from outside of China, the international audience. So how do you see Latin America being a priority in terms of attracting students once you have the campus and everything built? Because a lot of the topics covered today by the experts will be perfect teaching subjects, I think, in order to cope with a COVID recovery world. Back to you, Professor. I'll unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Andrew? Yeah, there we go. We can't hear you. There we go. There we go. Go ahead, Andrew.
The motive of my joining this webinar is a simple one. Make my face being shown to a lot of people, comprising my potential students and my potential teachers, speakers. First of all, GBA is too for us to neglect. But the thing is, nobody have a clear mind how to do business there, who's in charge, and who's doing what, who should come and who shouldn't come. So we are now, first of all, defining in like 10 or 3-5 years time, what might be happening in this location, what might be. But of course, this is
You've frozen, Professor, unfortunately. We are, I mean, for those who are not in Hong Kong tonight, we're actually in the middle of a very strong thunderstorm. It's been going off to my right-hand side, lightning and thunder. So it could be affecting the Wi-Fi. So apologies to those participating where we've had a little bit of disruption.
Coming here for business is the meaning of strategy. What's strategy? To do what to do and what not to do. And the thing is, they should come under something called a calculated risk. There is no risk at all, basically, when you attend courses in my school through the internet. But our objective of doing that is, after learning it, after understanding the kind of mechanics, the kind of opportunity and the risk factor, challenges, so on and so forth, you can make a much better choice. It's just like metabolism. You have to add in, you have to do something. You have to take in food so that to extract energy. The game is we cannot take the status quo. The whole world is changing. The Belt Road and also the GBA kind of initiative. And then Sergio Cesar mentioned something called diversification. There is no other alternative. We have to diversify, we have to develop, just like what Deng Xiaoping has mentioned. The only truth is development. When you want to develop, you don't develop inward, you develop sideward. China getting more important, and then it's supported by policy. When China wants to do something, he can do that something. Belt Road, GBA. So the thing is, we just go to the current and swim within the current. And then it is too complex for me to give you a very complete answer, mainly because different people might have different concerns. So just say it out, go to different people, and then go to webinar, and then talking to the right decision makers. So today, I know a lot of very good friends. So if there is a chance, I would like to ask questions, just like whether Donald Trump's scolding China every day would affect business in Latin America, so on and so forth. It's a good opportunity for us to gather together. And then the real meaning is not our speech, it's not our meaning. It's knowing what other peoples are doing and who are they. And then we can form new chemical reactions. That would be the impetus of my doing my business school. So hope that gives you some idea in my mind.
No, that's great. And just coming back to the reason for these roundtable discussions is really to get an up-to-date sort of pulse sense of the region. And I think we've been very lucky this evening to hear from Susanna's, even though she's from Latin America, but based in Asia, perspective and on the diversification requirements of the supply chains that's going to be happening. By how much we don't know. There was talk about the deindustrialization of China. How far will they go within the Guangdong province with that? Because there is not so much heard about, but actually some of the Japanese companies and others are actually increasing their investments into China still during this period. So whilst there's a lot of talk that there will be a movement out of China, how big that will be is a question mark, because as Thomas and others have mentioned, the infrastructure play is not there in other destinations that have been talked about. Vietnam has been talked a lot, but in reality, it's only been single digits, sort of 9 multinationals moving into Vietnam in the last 12 months. And that's still double any other Asian country, but it's still very small compared to the hundreds of companies based in China right now, and also Mexico on that side of the Pacific. So I think it's an important dialogue we're having to share Mexico in particular. So we thank our Mexican colleagues this evening for joining us in Asia. I think there's a lot more to talk about, and also action. As Professor Andrew has hinted, there's a lot of work to be done in cross-cultural efforts, not just from Hong Kong to Guangdong, but also the other side of the Pacific to China market as well. So it's a nice segue, Thomas, because the next PBEC webinars are going to be around the future of supply chains, and also about the digitalization of education that's happening. You know, obviously some of us have kids, and due to the continuous COVID crisis, some of our children are not going back to normal schools in September. Already in August that restarted due to this, and there's been a significant increase in teaching over digital means. Is that sustainable, and is that leaving others behind? So a lot to continue the dialogue. And as I said, we feed this, we gather all this information from all of these lovely experts and for those who are attending, and we do encourage further dialogue in between sessions. Feel free to follow us on the LinkedIn official page or join and visit us on our website. We have a lot of events going on by virtual means where you can attend. Most of the time it's free of charge, so please take that as you will. And we also send it out recorded over SoundCloud if you want to just listen to it on your commute to work. So thank you so much for joining this evening. I think that's all we have time for, unfortunately. I'm looking at questions. There was one, but I'm not sure any of our panelists would care to really take it, because it's more about a project investment opportunity, which I'm happy to talk to you, Alex, offline about, and put you in touch with some of the other members who that would be applying to. But yeah, investment is also part of the dialogue that we have on a regular basis, and we're more of a matchmaking organization these days than any other, in addition to our efforts with government. So once again, thank you for all joining. I know it's late here in Asia. Have a good rest, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we look forward to the next dialogue. Thanks to all of my speakers. Please give them not a round of applause, but I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All the best. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Stay healthy. Huh?
Yeah, take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.